I don't want to go live.
You don't want to go? Not yet. Not yet.
No, hang on. Oh, we popped in a little live, but you know what I'm going to do here?
You went up live.
Yeah, hang on. Hello, everyone. I think we're live. Hey, we're talking mental game today. It is. So here's the question I have for you as we get started. Does your mental game help you or hurt you on the pickleball court? Be honest now. So we have a chat down there. You can put it down in the chat. Does your mental game help or hurt you on the pickleball court? My name is CJ Johnson, and I am from the Better Pickleball channel, where we're dedicated to helping players over 50 live their best life on and off the court. So I'm waiting for some of those answers to come into the chat. Is that mental game of yours helping or is it hurting you? Yes or no? Helping, hurting? Put it in there. I come from my background. I teach skiing. I'm a golf professional, and I actually have been in the golf business for 25 years. And golf obviously was the mental game in golf was a major component. One of the things that I knew very early on was that my swing didn't change a lot day to day. I mean, yes, I changed a little bit physically, but for the most part, my golf swing was the same. But how I thought and what was going on here inside of those 6 inches was what impacted me on the course. And I can to this day tell you some of my best rounds were all up here when I was able to stay one shot at a time and to stay critically focused. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I am so pleased to have with us Dayne Gingrich. Dayne is a mental performance coach, and he is fresh off the Mind Shift Summit. So let me go ahead and I'm going to bring Dayne in here. Dayne, say hi to everybody.
Hey, CJ, thank you so much for having me. This has been I've been sitting here just wanting to jump in. This is exciting. I'm pumped to talk to your community about the mindset, mental game. And as you said, it's when the physical. We can get our physical, but what separates the greats from the good is what's upstairs at 6 inches between our ears, right?
It is, and I have to tell you. So before we got on, now I'm giving away Dayne's secrets here, because before we got on, he's having a conversation. He told his daughter that he was going to put her on for 10 minutes. She sounds like she's a gymnast, and he was testing her mental capacity. So the stuff that he tells you, he practices at home.
As much as we can, right? Even instilling fear in her to come on live with no preparation is always a tip. Always.
Oh, that is wonderful. Well, hey, I tell you what we're going to do today. By the way, we got our lovely Dale Cassell is in the chat. She's our Vanna White of the chat. And thank you, Dale, for being here yet again today. If you have some questions for Dayne, please put them in the chat, and you can put a Q or the word question in front of it. That way she knows that it's a question and that we will put it up in front. But Dayne, before we get started, because you've had some big stuff going on lately. You had the Mind Shift Summit. You've just had a lot of things going on. Some people here at Better Pickleball might not be familiar with who you are and what you're doing. So let's just take a few minutes and tell everybody about you, please.
Well, I started. I'll take you back to when I was 2. I'm just joking. So I grew up playing tennis and basketball my whole life, super athletic, and just kind of was all into that world, and played some semi-professional tennis, and kind of started to break down physically a little bit, and started teaching the game, but was always kind of had the foundation of the mental game. My dad and I talked about, from as early as I can remember, what separated the champions from those who you didn't hear about, right? And he was always challenging me to try to answer that question about the mindset and mental toughness. So when I started teaching tennis, I noticed that just physical alone, the techniques alone, weren't really growing athletes as much as I thought that they should. So I started experimenting with just the mental piece that I knew just as an athlete. And what I saw was some pretty cool results. Some trends started to change. Kids actually started to have more fun, a little bit more engaging. And it just kind of opened my eyes to maybe there's, mental performance could kind of be a path that I want to look into. So I just started experimenting with my tennis players, and then started really studying it, and was really lucky to have a couple really strong mentors, and just kind of went all in on what mindset means, what mental performance means, from what I knew as an athlete, what I knew I was not good at, my fears and my own doubts. And I committed myself that before I was going to really dive in with a bunch of athletes, other athletes, I needed to break my own self down first. So I spent a lot of time figuring that out. And then it kind of just organically turns into other sports, and test taking anxiety with students in school. And then just kind of, it just turned into a business all of a sudden. It just kind of happened. And then I found this silly pickleball game, right? And I played it 2 years ago. I played it once and then never picked up a paddle again. And then picked it up pretty seriously last year, right before Nationals was my first event. And just went all in on that as an athlete. And then I posted something on the pickleball forum, just a question, or a question/article, and the engagement blew my mind. Like, and I've posted, and I've been in part of other groups with other sports, golf, tennis, basketball, swimming, equestrian. But the engagement I found in the pickleball community was like no other. It was mind blowing. And I thought, oh my gosh, like they're really hungry and want to learn what this mental thing is about related to their sport. And that was just January of 2019, February, March of 2019. So it's been over a year, and have just kind of really started to laser into the pickleball community with mental performance while still training. And I got my rating up close to a 5.8, a little over a 5.8, and competing my first year on senior tour this year and having a blast while simultaneously growing the mental performance business in the pickleball world. Just completed a mind shift summit online. Now that we can't get out, we got to be creative, right? Instead of seeing people face to face, we got to get creative. So, was really blessed to have you on that mind shift summit last week, and just kind of growing, as you know, right? As an athlete, mental dominance is just such a ginormous topic with so many branches that come from it. And everybody is so individual with their different motivations and triggers and their past experience and their future goals that we could spend every day for the rest of our lives and still not tap into all of it. And I think that's what's infinitely fascinating with the mind, the mental game for me. And we never stop learning, right? We never stop learning what works, what doesn't work, what strengthens us, right? How to adjust, how to make it stronger, how to wake up and improve, like all of it. So really excited to talk today specifically about this huge. So I believe mental dominance is the holy grail of peak performance. And then I believe self-belief, a high level of belief, is the holy grail within mental dominance, right? Without a really high level of belief, those obstacles that come get us, they're going to engulf us, right? The pressure, stress moments are going to engulf us. And so what is belief about, right? What kind of role does it play in our long-term success? Is it, most believe that to have a high level of belief, we first have to have positive results. We got to have, wins, right? And obviously belief will compound from positive results. But if that's the only thing we're basing it on, then in my belief, we're kind of out of control, waiting for those results to happen, versus what I, try to live, and what I definitely teach is that belief and confidence is a choice. Like, we get to choose whether we believe in ourselves. We get to choose whether we specifically, on the court level, I get to choose whether I break or not mentally. Like, you may beat me, you may have a better dink or a better third, you might win that match, but I promise you, because this is a choice I made, that I won't mentally break. That statement alone creates another level of self-belief and confidence, right? That's right there within our control, and something we can bring out onto the court to our training every day, right? We don't have to wait for wins, right? We can choose to be confident. We can choose to believe at another level. I can choose to outwork my opponents. Like, some of the things that I choose to do while I'm training right now in the ball machine, because I can't get out and play rec, I believe that my opponents aren't doing that. Like, that's a level of confidence that I get to declare. I don't have to wait for a win to grow my level of belief that way. Now, they might be working, right? But it's but I get to choose how hard, the type of drills, where it's going to take me physically. And I get to declare that because of this training, nothing will break me mentally, because I'm trying to put myself through high levels of stress, before I even step out onto the court. Right. So I think that's a really strong distinction. Is it, and a question we want to kind of try to tackle, is it based on results, our belief, or do we actually get to choose it? Even while we're losing, do I get to choose to be confident? I just missed 5 dinks in a row. I might adjust, but I'm not going to lose confidence in my dink if I've trained, right? Like, I get to, because I've trained, I've also trained myself how to adjust and maybe bring in another strategy when my dinking is off. That's another level of belief that I've trained myself to kind of have to adjust to in real time. So I think belief is the holy grail of mental toughness.
Okay, so let's jump in a little further into belief, because I mean, you bring up question that I'm sure I get all the time as well as you get all the time, and you alluded to that. Is it the cart before the horse or the horse before the cart, right? So when, as an example, when you have somebody who's missing a serve, right, left and right, and they're like, well, I'm not going to believe until it's outcome based, right? Once I get serves in, then it's really easy to believe. So why don't you talk just a little bit first about how do you develop belief if you haven't already achieved the outcome?
So that's a tough one. This is the fun push and pull, right? This is the fun tug of war, because maybe in the micro, we feel a little less than, right? But belief, remember, belief starts in our, belief begins in our training, right? I think a lot of people think that they go drill a little bit or they practice just a little bit and they'll come on the court and magically have this high level of confidence without training it. So look, I think first comes acceptance that any outcome is possible, even if I've trained. Meaning my serve might be off, but because I've already pre-accepted it, it's not going to destroy the level of confidence. I'm going to have to fight through missing my serve. So what does that mean? That means we have 2 options in that moment, right? And so there's a micro level of belief within the option. If I'm missing my serve, I have 2 options. And I highly disagree with there being a third. I either say I suck, I either lose belief and lose confidence. I either say I can't serve and I won't be able to serve and I'll never find it. Or because I've trained myself before I stepped onto the court, how to talk to myself, right? Not just the physicality of the serve. That's a small part. But I believe people, when we're off with whatever shot we're talking about, yeah, I think some of it can be mechanical for sure. But I think it also compounds because we haven't trained ourselves how to talk our way through, how to visualize, use visual imagery before it happens, how to, force ourselves through, not even force, I don't even like that word, how to guide ourselves through the struggle when we're in it. And it does start with 10 serves in a row, and it's going to suck, right? I'm not saying it's not going to be painful. It's not going to suck, but I'm not stopping and I'm not breaking. And just that mentality alone, just that declaration alone changes our physiology, right? It changes the level of emotion we have while we're missing, right? Because if we look at it as binary, either I suck and it's never going to come back and I can't believe I'm missing and I'm letting down my partner and X, Y, and Z, versus, all right, I just missed 3 serves in a row. Here's my favorite 2 words, by the way, when stuff like this happens. Now what? I love asking that question in the heat of battle, right? To our partners. Okay, now what? Because now we get to search for a positive solution. So when I'm missing my serve, I might have to adjust the mechanic, right? Go to my pro, right? What I've learned from my pro. Oh, she said, oh, that's right, I'm doing this, and keep adjusting mechanically. But we also have to ask the question, now what will be my response? And we get to choose, I suck or I quit or I'm not going to serve, or we get to choose, I've already worked on this. I've already written it. I've already visualized it. I've already talked myself through it before I came on the court because I knew at any moment something like this might happen. And I've already declared to myself when this happens, not if, because it's a when, I'm not going to break. I'm going to keep going. Maybe I throw up a lob serve. Maybe I hit it under left-handed. Maybe I hit a little different spin. Maybe I adjust. What I know I won't do is go down with my ship. Right? I won't quit on myself and go down with my ship. I'll make any adjustment possible. detaching from the result. I may do all those things and I still might miss 100 million serves in a row. Does that make you a failure? No. We just got to go back on the court and start training and start, learning how to fight our way through that again. Right? So I think too many people get caught up into the micro of belief versus the macro. Right? If we look at the micro trends day to day in our training and in our matches and / tournaments, they're all over the place. I play great, I play terrible, I serve great, I serve terrible, like the micro, blah, blah, blah. But I teach and I implore everyone to start looking more at the macro trend of your growth. Even though today you might be all over the place. What does your macro trend look like? Right? Because if we're teaching ourselves through the big picture, our macro is going to keep climbing. Right? It's only when we don't declare that our macro starts to decline. Right? But if we're putting in work and we're working our belief system and we're working our mental game, the trend will go. And the trend doesn't have a whole lot to do with the W's and L's either. Right? We get caught in the wins and losses. The outcome's uncontrollable. When I say trend, I say, am I growing? Am I improving? When last month I was in the tournament and I missed 5 serves in a row and I banged my paddle and I called the timeout and I screamed to myself and I said I suck and I'm never getting it through it. Now a month later, I missed those 5, 6 serves in a row and instead I'm talking differently to myself. I'm fighting through it. I'm reminding myself that I'm making some type of adjustment. I'm acting differently, more positively than I did a month ago. That's a win. And I think those kind of wins I want to lean into because those are controllable wins. All of which, CJ, grow belief. Just the statement of now what, the question now what, and trying to answer it grows belief. Even if you miss 3 more serves in a row.
Okay.
That's a choice.
All right. Okay.
That's my choice.
It's a choice.
Come back to me. I can tell you because I know you have a wedge in your hand. And I know the standard thought process. I just missed 4 wedges in a row from 98 yards. How in the hell am I possibly going to believe in the next wedge from 98 yards? How did you do it? You had to decide. I either believe or I don't believe in that moment. Like, that's a decision. Now, you can go train your mechanics later, but right now, it's not about fixing the mechanic. It's about fixing the language in your mind after you miss those 5 wedges, right? When they should be 3 feet and you hit them just off the green, you get to choose, CJ, right? On your next wedge. Right. There's no way I'm getting this to where I should, or because I didn't miss 5 in a row, I just missed that one. And I get one. I get 1 wedge. I don't have 5 others, I get 1 wedge.
And I think that's where most people get confused, when we tend to have poor performance in and I don't even know that pressure situation is the right word, but when we have performance anxiety, it can happen in rec play, it can happen in a tournament, it can happen because you think you should just easily beat the other team on the other side of the net. It can happen for any reason. I think when that happens with people, very often we go back into mechanics, right? We try right then and there to fix the mechanics of something versus fix what's going on inside of our head. So why don't you talk a little bit about, because there are 2 components to that, right? One is, let's go first. Let's go to the training that has to happen beforehand, because you're not going to be in a match or in rec play and just be able to pull this up automatically. There is stuff that you need to do, and not just on the pickleball court. There's stuff that you need to do beforehand. So, before we jump into questions, why don't you give everybody like 1 or 2 or what things that you coach your students from a very beginning standpoint, right? Here's where you start.
Yeah. You just asked me to give 1 or 2. Have you met me? Like, you won't single screen, so it's just me talking to me.
See, I can keep rotating. I can change your screens. I told him if he gets off on this, I'm not going to let him see anybody but himself. I'm going to shut it all down so he can't see it, and then he's got to talk to me. No, but let's start, because we do have some questions coming in, and I want to make sure that I get to those. But there are so many people on here that half my audience has never played another sport. right? So
Right.
they don't
Right.
necessarily have those skills to draw on. So how do you develop
Right.
like two main cornerstone skills to help you to develop this belief?
So the first thing I'll always go to, and I don't care what sport we're talking about, right, is I want to go to the macro vision of when we're on the call, right? When we're on a phone call and you say my mental game is quote weak, or I have this issue, I want to be better in these moments, right? Before I even give any micro tip, I know nothing about you, right? I want to hear what your macro vision of quote improvement looks like, right? When we talk about belief, I want to hear from you what that means to you before we create a plan. So I think that's the very first step, is create and design a detailed picture of what it is you want from you in a month, 2 or 3 as you grow it. And I'm not talking about I'm a 3'5" and I want to go beat Simone at the US Open as a 6'5". Like I just mean within your personal journey, what does improvement, specifically belief, look like? Because I think too many people don't even have that picture. They want to fix the day-to-day stuff. I can't serve. I miss the dink under pressure. I just don't believe. But we don't have that picture even designed yet to strive for. So that's the first thing. What does, in your own journey, in your own specifics on the pickleball court, what does more belief, more powerful declared belief look like to you, and in what scenario? And then based off of that answer, I will then break down and help guide you through what does that look like when you walk on the court, hitting X shot that you just described to me, or being that X player when you like, what do people say about you when they're playing you, in terms of, if we're just talking about belief, right? Then we start writing, and then we're always using visual imagery, right? Because before we can go on the court and take action on whatever it is we want to improve, we have to see it. Like, we have to know what that picture looks like so that we can get really detailed into our daily work. I think too many people go and work and they hope belief happens. Because everybody's answer will be different. I want to believe like this. In this moment, this happened, and I lost because I X. All right, well, let's design that detailed picture. What does that look like? And then, what does that feel like when you've achieved it? When you walk on the court, when you're in that exact moment you just described, explain to me as if it's already happened what you feel like. And not only that, I want to hear from your opponents. What do they feel like when you're in that belief zone, right? Go to the other side of the court, because that's a big part of our strategy as we, raise our level, is looking through our opponent's lenses for their strengths and their weaknesses. So let's create even more detailed visual imagery of what belief looks like for us through their lenses. Oh my gosh, like CJ, when she walks on the court in the biggest moments, I just see that she X. I see when she's with her partner that she talks like this. I can see she walks like this. Like, create an emotional, detailed visual of what belief means to you, and then we can back it up and work day to day on that. But with the mental training, with physical, we can go in the gym and we can lunge, we can sprint, and we can do shoulder presses, and we will physically see the growth in our body. But the problem with the mental game is we can't see with our eyes improvement right away, because we tend to look at the W's and L's as a growth indicator, right? Am I winning? Am I losing? And that may have nothing to do with your mental game growth, right? So we can't see with our eyes our shoulder getting stronger in the mental game. We got to write it, right? And we got to take notes on everything that we're trying to become if we're talking about belief in that specific scenario. So what does that thing look like? What does that belief picture look like? How do your opponents see you when you're in that state of heightened belief? And then based on that answer, I'll take you back, or you will take you back, because you're doing the work. You'll take you back, and we'll create a plan based on the answer you gave me. And that's what I love so much about the mental game, right, CJ, is there's no stock answer. Everybody's completely different based on what they want and where they're going, right? And especially here, right, where a lot of players didn't have. We're not talking to Ben right now. That's a completely different conversation. We're talking to the 3-0 to the 4-0, maybe some 4-5s, right, that don't have, like you said, past experience that they can. So let's create it from scratch. What does that belief, that heightened state of belief, feel like. And I don't know is not allowed. If you don't know, we can't help you.
We can't help you.
Let's blue. Like, what does that look like while you're on the court?
Well, and because that's one of the things. I mean, if you look particularly at Tiger Woods before, everything, when he was so dominant inside of golf, that was one of the things that was his major. Yes, don't get me wrong. He was talented. He's talented beyond belief. But when he was there on Sunday and in the hunt, people knew that, and they understood that persona that he had created, and that was one of his major weapons, which he lost. He became real when his world changed.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that Dayne is talking about is, like what type of, what do you want it to be, right? So Dayne, let's jump into some questions, because we got some questions. We got some questions coming
We have a question?
Oh, we have multiple questions coming in. So I kind of want to put two together, because they lead into. So PJ Graves, he asks, how to keep rec play confidence during competition, and Carol. She also asked, I have so much confidence in rec play, but get so nervous in competition. So how do you keep that confidence and that belief that you get in rec play the minute you enter a tournament?
That's so awesome, because that's like the very first question that literally 15 people asked me today privately that I have written down right here. That is the number one question in all sports too, by the way. So first, understand why we're playing so well in rec, right? Let's just ask that question first. Why am I playing so much better in rec? Because you're not prioritizing the win as much as you are in the tournament, right? If you lose a rec game, I got next game, right? We can just move on to the next court, right? Maybe with a different partner, and we continue. In a tournament play, we get 2 losses and we're out. So we prioritize in the tournaments, we're prioritizing the wrong thing. And I secondly believe most people, while they're playing rec, they don't bring the same tournament intensity to those games. So I think that's where you really want to start working on, is bringing the same type of tournament focus and intensity and game planning as you would in a tournament, right? But while you're doing that though, prioritize what is really important to you. And because first, just a foundational understanding that you cannot control the wins and the losses just has to be part of your DNA. To control the wins and the losses, then you would never lose again, right? Why would we ever lose? So we can't control winning. Otherwise, I could just ask you, show me how to win. You could never show me how to win. You could only show me how to make the right decisions, hit the right shots, and hopefully eventually you'll get the W. So the fundamental understanding is in rec, you're playing freely because you're not focused on the W. In rec, you're taking more chances, right? We're not so afraid of missing in rec, right? And so yes, of course, and then also, I don't know that we can 100% simulate the exact tournament pressure that we feel in rec that we feel in a tournament, but we can get close. And that again is a personal decision. How much are we screwing around versus how much are we bringing that same type of focus and intensity and decision making to our rec play, so we can get as close as possible. And I think not enough people practice the way that they choose then to play in tournaments. Now when we get, we play rec and we play free and we're earning, we're trying misdirections and stuff's working, we then step into a tournament and we focus on, oh my gosh, I hope I don't miss, because if I miss, then I'm going to lose. And if I lose, then I'm going to go home. And we completely put our lenses on the thing that tightens us up the most, which is, I hope I don't fill in the blank, versus I want to, this is my game plan and I'm going to try to execute this. I notice that he or she is weaker here. I'm going to be intentional about that shot, like you did in rec. Come tournament time again, because our priority is, I hope I don't lose. And I'll even go this far. Most average amateurs, until they train themselves, aren't even focusing on, I hope I win. I want to win the tournament. So many, too many, are focused on, oh my gosh, I hope I don't lose. I hope I don't go 2 and out. I came all this way. I paid all this money. I stayed in these nice hotels, man. I hope I don't. She's so good. I hope I don't lose. They're the toughest seeds. I don't want to play them. All the things that negate peak performance, we focus on in tournaments. So to wrap up, in rec, you focus on what you should be focusing on: freedom, going for shots without the focus on losing because you have another game to play, right? So and two, we don't bring the same level of intensity or game planning to our rec, right? In tournaments, all of a sudden, right, CJ, we come together. Okay, what do you think we should do, right? What do you like? I noticed it, but in rec, we're like, hey, let's just hit it wherever and see whatever happens, right? So there's two things going on. I tend to play worse in rec because I am trying new things until the week of tournament comes, and the week of a tournament is when I make a conscious decision that now all my rec play is tournament play, right? I'm going to be just as intense. I'm going to have that same button that I push for tournaments, and that's how I train, kind of closing the gap as best as we can from rec to tournament. Again, it's an intentional decision.
So because you talked about this a little bit in the beginning, staying out of the outcome, right? I mean, the minute, so many times we put that, I don't want to have 2 and out, right? I don't want to lose to Dayne and his partner, right? I'm better than he is. I don't want to lose to him. So we start,
no, you're not.
We start we start putting all these outcomes into our mind. What's a tool that we can use, because it doesn't matter if it's rec play or tournament play, to help us to stay out of the outcome and in the moment?
That is a really easy answer, and it's a simple answer. Such a difficult one to execute when we're in the stressors of a tournament, and that is practice intentional decision making based on the information you have in front of you, which is our opponents, right? And maybe even my partner, my strengths and my weaknesses based on them. Because when we do all of that, we can't consciously go to, I hope I don't lose. Obviously, when we walk into a tournament, the outcome is out there, and there's no way you can not have that. We're in a tournament. We know if we lose twice, we go home. I don't even say try to ignore knowing that if you lose or knowing if you win, you move on. It's there. What I want to do in the midst of it is practice taking the information I have and making the best intentional decision I can in the moment. And then rinse and repeat. And you do it over, because you can't do both at the same time. You can't say, hey, Mariano, what do you think we should do here? Who's the weaker one? Where should we hit and why? Oh, you think we should do that? Okay, well, let's do that. When you do this, I'm going to do this, and we'll try to make this happen, this path. I can't do that. We can't talk like that, and I can't focus like that and simultaneously say, man, I hope I don't miss. You have to choose one. And what I know about the brain, if you don't choose what you want, your brain will default into what it doesn't want, because it is hardwired to keep you safe, meaning it's hardwired to keep you from pain, meaning it's hardwired to keep you from thinking, it's hardwired to keep you thinking about not missing. So all of this, if you do nothing, the mind will just engulf you in, I hope I don't miss because I don't want to feel pain from the miss. So we have to rewire that. And just like a physical skill, just like dinking or a third or working out in the weight room, creating intentional decision-making habits, that's also a skill set. The more reps we put in rec play now, the more it'll carry over to the tournament. And so what I like to also teach pickleball players specifically too is, if you're doing it on a scale of 1 to 10, if in rec you're doing it on a level 7, realize that when you step into the stressors of a tournament, it's probably going to be a 5 or a 4, just naturally, right? And then eventually it turns into a 5 or a 6, and then it comes. Because when the tournament hits you, wins and losses and the stress of that, it's also coming, right? LeBron James, we're in pickleball. Simone still talks and thinks about not losing, and she's the GOAT. I don't care male or female. She's the GOAT. She's been around longer than Ben, so we'll give her the love, right? She still thinks about it. She still focuses on it. But what she's done that most 3-5s don't do, and only because she's trained it longer, is she's learned to feel the fear of, I hope I don't lose, or I don't want to miss, because she still feels that. She just overrides it with a more powerful, intentional focus of, I need to do this. And she's just trained that habit. That's all it is. It's just a habit she's trained so that it overpowers the fear of, I don't want to miss. And just most 3-5s just haven't developed that habit to overpower the hardwiring. That's all it is. You're not dumb. You're not stupid. You're not weak. You just haven't trained the skill yet.
So let's talk about that skill, and let's talk about the hard wiring, because Dana's right. Your mind, and it doesn't matter if it's a pickleball court, a basketball court, or going to the grocery store, right? Yeah. Your brain is hardwired to protect you, and it is automatically going to go to the negative. And most of the time, we don't even realize it. And so one of the questions that actually I think is coming from Dale, our Vanna of the chat, is how do you train yourself to talk positively, or at least to stop, the negative mental dialogue and oftentimes beratement that comes when we're not performing to the level that we believe we should perform to? What are some tools that people can use to do that?
So again, it's really simple. It's just difficult. Instead of going to the place of, I want to stop talking negatively, let's just delete all the I don't want to's. The more attention we put, the more we talk about and focus on what you don't want to do, what you want to stop, like ironically, the more we grow that negative habit. So let's first just focus on what it is. What do I want from the positive self-talk, right? So the quick answer is, first, and with the mental training, I really am a big believer in writing that stuff down. How do you want to talk to yourself while you're playing? And list them all. List as many things you can talk about in as many situations as you can think of. How would you like to, don't even worry about if it's going to get done or how long it's going to take or what the kind of work you're going to have to put in. First off, like before we find any answer, we got to know what that answer is about, right? How do you want to talk to yourself while you're on the court in X situation? Before you even step on the court, let's just create that as a base. Now, when we go onto the court, it's not about, okay, I'm going to not talk to myself the way I used to talk to. That's what people do, right? They just put all that negative energy to the thing they don't want to do, and they continue to grow what they don't want to do, and then they get upset because they keep doing what they don't want to do, not realizing they've built that. So we walk on the court because we've written exact intentions on how we want to talk to ourselves while we're on the court. We bring those intentions and thoughts and the exact self-talk onto the court. And whenever we're in that state of belittlement, right, when we go into that negative self-talk place, and we will, it's not about going there, because you will, and I don't care who you are. Ben still goes there. It's not about going there. It's about recognizing when you go there and pulling yourself to this other place. Here's the secret. Again, I hate secret. That's cheesy. Here's the answer. The other place are the things that you wrote down. The other place are the answers you've given yourself. When you go to this place, I already know what to do. Knowing what to do is the first step. Now let's repeat those the way we want to talk to ourselves when we're in that negative state, right? So it first comes with, and I'm just such a ginormous believer. First off, because I'm just naturally a negative person, pessimistic. Like I've had to work on this so much, CJ, and wondering why I kept getting negative results off the court, on the court. I look at a situation, or I used to look at a situation, and my wife would say, you still do. And I see the negative of it. And I used to belittle myself, right? So training ourselves to focus on how we want to talk and act and walk and shoulders and what that feels like. That's a really tough one. But again, it's about just putting in the reps, right? And not leaning into what you want to fix, but lean more into what you want the solution to be. And again, everybody's different. And so how do you know what that's? You got to write that stuff down. You got to make that part of your blood flow, your DNA. The sun is hot and the snow is cold, and this is how I talk to myself.
Yep.
Like that natural. And just the only way to do that is to rep that out as many times as you can. During your match, when you fall into the negative, bring yourself back. Oh, no, that's right. This is what I want to say to myself. This is how I want to act. And you just keep repping that until, just like everything, it just becomes a habit.
You know, one of the questions that I have always loved, and this is not original. I'm sure I got this from one of my mental coaches along the way. I had the good fortune to get a lot of input from Dr. Bob Rotella, who was really one of the first out there and big in golf, especially in the early '90s when sports psychology in golf was coming to was growing. And one of the things, and this probably came from him, was if I talk to you the way you talk to yourself, would we still be friends? And if the answer was no, you've got some work to do.
Yeah. But isn't that the key, right? Because I think a lot of people, CJ, read those quotes, and I love Bob. He was the groundbreaker, right? He's the OG. Yeah. Most people read those quotes or read the books or watch these webinars, seminars, workshops. They go and they consume the info, and then they go, "I'm good." No, you're what? You're good. You've got to now go put that work in. So when you miss a shot and you want to scream at yourself, it's okay to want to scream at yourself, and it's actually okay if you do. In terms of the macro learning process, that's okay as long as you say, "Oh no, wait. Let's go to this place instead. All right, I missed a dink. Now what?" Right? And I really like those two words can change your entire physiological makeup in the stressor after a mistake. After a mistake, we have this instinctive response to X. Usually it's negative. And in pickleball, it's crazy. Like that first split second of, oh my, it's like it's accepted in pickleball and where it's not in other sports. Asking yourself, now what, is like Googling, hitting Google. When we go on Google and we type in that search, like, what is it? We try to find the answer. And so if you ask yourself, now what, after a miss, your brain will give you, or at least search for, that answer. And then it's up to you to go put that into practice, right?
I really like the now what, now what, now what's next. Talk a little bit about this though, because this is also, and I know this comes from Rotella because I've been using this way since my golf days. Going back to negative self-talk, right? Because most of the time when we start that, and we start in really hard. You dumb, you know what, and all those this is family friendly show. But you all know those words that go on in your head, right? One of the things that I learned from him was I could say anything I wanted for 10 seconds as long as it didn't involve my performance. Do you use a tool similar to that when you're coaching?
I like that. And especially for golf, and Tiger said that too. Tiger would give himself 10 seconds or 10 steps and do whatever he wanted, right? And I don't know if, his personal thing is he was allowed to berate himself for 10 steps and then it's gone. For pickleball, I love, because look, I think if we bottle up, so the quick answer is yes. But for pickleball, it's less than 5 seconds. You're allowed to have a response as long as you're pulling yourself into now what. Instead of what people do, especially when they're learning it, is they try to go cold turkey. And they try not to say anything, not to have any kind of response. And what happens? Right? You just explode. Right? So until your response eventually is neutral, allow yourself some leeway to have the, oh my gosh, I can't, as long as you're attaching the, okay, now what? What should I say? Or now what should I do with my partner? I missed that. Oh my God. Okay. Should I go to my partner? Should I ask what, and start trying to find the next point solution, right? So that you can get on to the next point. I think it's really important to not run from our negative emotion necessarily, right? Kind of embrace it as long as we're, I'm not saying throw F-bombs and chuck paddles and all of that, but allow ourselves to, look, when we miss dinks, DJ, that's an unforced error usually. I'm going to be pissed, and that's okay, as long as I don't allow that to step into my next point. So It's a matter of training yourself on the now what. Because again, I can't say this enough. Now what will not allow you to stay in the same negative emotion. It can't. If you say it with emotional intensity to yourself, okay, now what? You'll find the answer. And then it's about taking the answer and putting it into practice for the next point and just repeating and repeating and repeating. And then pretty soon you won't even have to say now what, it'll be an automatic response.
It'll be an automatic.
I've done it with donuts. CJ. I used to look at donuts and I used to have to say now what? No, now what? And now I just look at a donut and I don't have to say it anymore.
And you don't say it. Okay, hey, we got a couple more questions coming in. Some of these I have been skipping because we've answered them along the way. But let's go into specifically, let's see, it was back here. Diz had a question about high-level mixed doubles. And so I'm really thinking he's talking professional mixed doubles, and 5-0 professional mixed doubles, because his question is, how do the women deal with the men often taking over the play? And maybe Diz is a gal. I'm sorry, I don't know. I said, man, maybe Diz is a gal and wants to know that for herself. I'm not real sure, but tell us a little bit about that.
It's funny too, because I was just speaking with Simone on her show last week, and I asked the same question, right, with Ben, because she plays with Ben now. And if you've ever watched Ben Johns play, like even with Simone, he's over into her court, right? And she said, look, man, as long as he's and she didn't say these words, but she's like, I'm fine with it, right? And why is she fine with it? Because he executes. And I think, yes, I think some guys, and I won't mention any names, they do go overboard. And it's the machismo, it's the I'm better and I'm stronger and I'm longer, right? And I think there's definitely a place for long arms in the middle where there's more power with the man's forehand than, a woman's backhand, and obviously there are exceptions to that, right? Lee and Anna Lee and Jessie, et cetera, right? Like Jessie's backhand is stronger than most men's forehand. So how do they deal with it? And that's a really tough question. I think it's really based on who you're playing with and the execution in which he is or she is executing on. Now, specifically with Ben, when he reaches into Simone's court with his forehand in the middle, and a lot of people will say, well, why doesn't he just let her dink? She's going to make her dink. She's not going to miss her dink. But if you're at that level, he's not just dinking it. Now, sometimes he will, but he has an option of that forehand. He can flip that 3 or 4 different spots where Simone can't with the same shot, right? So if he is that much better in the same ball with 3 or 4 more different options, I think that's the obvious answer. But unfortunately, right, there's a lot of men out there just taking over the court just to take over the court because they've seen Ben and Matt do it, and they think that they're the guy. So I think it's very, very individual. When I was playing open with Lauren Stratman, her backhand was phenomenal. I didn't have to cover that, right? And I'm playing, with someone, if I'm playing with someone else who is it just really is based on the situation. So yes, it's difficult, it's brutal, and some guys should just back the hell off, right? And let her play. And then at other times, I think sometimes cutting, look, just on a general, I'm going to probably get blasted. Just stereotypically, just generally speaking, the men are longer, stronger, taller, and can reach. Doesn't mean they're better, right? And I think that goes, but I think, there's definitely a huge machismo thing going on in pickleball that I can't stand watching. When he's not executing. He's just doing it because he saw Ben do it, and because Ben can do it, he should be doing it. And she can just sit over in her little corner over there and don't miss your little I think there's a point where it's ridiculous. But how you deal with it, you have a conversation, right? And if it's working, again, CJ, it's like, what are your goals for the tournament, right? Is it to go 50-50 and I hit 50 and you hit 50? Or if me reaching over in front of your backhand dink and flipping something up for a 1-2 is working and now we're getting to the podium, I want the podium. So I think I just think it's really individual. And I don't think I answered that question because it's so all over the place.
And I think you did though, because I mean, what I would say for me, and this doesn't matter if I'm playing mixed doubles or if I'm playing um, uh, women's doubles, you most often, and again, it depends on who I'm playing with, but most often I go out there with the attitude of my job is to set you up to put it away.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if it's you. I don't care if it's my female partner. If I can set you up to put a shot away, my belief is we're going to win more points. If we win
Right.
more
Okay.
points, ultimately we're going to win more games. Now, I take that attitude in, but like you said, there are times where it's like, seriously, you needed to, you needed to put your paddle like in front of my face to get that
Right.
one.
Right.
so
Right.
so you are so right, it truly does depend. But I also think, to answer that question, um finding a partner who thinks about it the same way you do can be challenging. And
Yeah.
man, once you find them, hold on, don't let them get away.
Hold on. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I'm so glad the question wasn't about husbands and wives or partners playing together or how y'all do that is beyond me.
I have to tell you, my husband does not. My husband doesn't like pickleball, but we're both golf professionals, and we realized
Mm.
very early on. I can count probably on two hands the number of rounds we've actually played together, and we've been married 24 years. Um,
Wow. Yeah.
and we don't play any
Yeah.
competitive rounds together because, as you said, people are very different how they want to be on the course. I'm very focused, but
Right.
I'm still very open because that's who I am. Whereas other people are real grinders and just
Yeah.
grinding all the time. And that's not a good fit for me. That's not, because that takes
Right.
me to a negative mental place. So, like Dayne said,
Right.
it's understanding who you are and how do you
Yeah.
perform your best. So
And
let's see.
communicate with your partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Let's see. I knew I missed one here, and that's what I'm going back to. So PJ asked how do you keep an offensive versus defensive attitude? How do you stay in there mentally?
First, so again, this is beautiful. It comes back to training, right? What is an offensive mindset and what is a defensive mindset slash strategy slash technique? And go about training those really specific skills, right? So X is an offensive and Y is defensive, and you just like anything else, how do you know when to dink versus fire, right? You experiment with it and learn when you can dink, learn when you can fire, learn when you should be resetting, learn when you should be refiring. And again, and then and then after I say that, it does come down to kind of the type of player you are instinctively. Some players will, when Riley Newman will reset the majority, where maybe somebody else on the exact same ball will counterattack, both successful, but Riley's instincts are this, and this other player, he's more of this. So first start with, on a general scale, what is offense, what is defense, rep the heck out of them so that when it happens in a split of a split second, your body responds, right? Your first, and I say this just to scare everybody, muscle memory doesn't exist on a literal level. Muscles memorize nothing. What happens is we've put our muscles in this situation, but our brain is teaching our muscles how to respond. So we've got to intentionally, with intense focus in practice, put ourselves in the situation so that in the moments of stress, in the split of a second, our muscles respond because we've trained them, mentally first with the correct amount of intensity and emotional connection to the shot. So, and then when you walk on in that split second moment, your body will respond accordingly. But again, Riley's reset might be your counterattack. So it does also come down to, this is what I love about the virtual coaching and what I don't at the same time, because I don't know, I believe it was PJ. I don't know him, right? I hope it was him. I don't know PJ and where he's come from, the dynamics, other sports, so to give that answer, maybe your reset, maybe your defense should be an offense, or maybe your offense should be a defense based on, who you are as a player. So first off, knowing what the basic offensive and defensive situations are, rep the heck out of them, and rep them with intensity, right? Whether you're on the ball machine, even on a wall, with a friend, like when you're drilling, whether it's 10 balls or it's 10,000 balls, drill with emotional intensity and as much visual imagery. The wall doesn't have to be a wall. It can be the player that you're probably going to meet in next tournament. You can put a face to that wall and just, become intense and focused within the drill. And that'll also cement those habits at a much quicker rate than just hitting drills just to hit drills.
Absolutely. And, because, one of the things that Dayne is stressing here is mental performance just doesn't happen the minute you get to a tournament. This is stuff that you have to practice, beforehand and afterwards and in between. And frankly, a lot of work can be done off the courts. As an example, before this, I mean, many of I'm over on Pickleball list, and certainly if you want to join us, you're welcome to join us over there. But we've had a really engaging conversation about this in terms of the books and the resources and just kind of all different things that you can do when you're not on the courts, or when you're not in even when you're not in a competitive situation, which is what Dayne was talking about, drilling against the wall.
I'm obsessed, CJ. I'm obsessed with studying players and looking at concepts, not just shots and mechanics, but looking at how they, I'll YouTube. My wife is so sick of it. Every night, and I probably shouldn't even say this, I don't even give it away. And at least an hour and a half of video analysis on X players, right? Looking at how they think of certain situations, how their footwork, why did they hit this shot? And very often I'll even message the person I'm watching via text or Instagram Messenger or Facebook, like whatever. I'm like, why did you hit that shot? Or what were you thinking in this shot? Or how did you, I'm obsessed with, because that is mental work. That is creating visual work. I'm sitting on my couch having M&Ms. Don't tell anybody I shouldn't have M&Ms. It's not good for you. Visually learning the skills I personally want to bring onto the court based on my skill level and who I'm playing, what I think I need to improve on. That's visual work. I fall asleep without exception, every night visualizing the game I want to incorporate when tournaments start. Certain shots I want to hit, certain patterns I want to create, certain players on the other side that I want to beat up on, right? My opponent, all of that. So it's actually barely when you're on the court. It should be when you're on the court, but you have so much more time off the court that you can be developing your mental game. Call it belief, call it what you want to call it, through visual work. I think video analysis is not just watching Lee Waters play or Anna Lee playing, but rewinding, watching, going into these videos with one, maybe two concepts that you want to learn from that player, right? Watching yourself, video yourself going back. So I think to your point, sorry, CJ, I kind of hijacked the combo there, the topic. I think working when you're not on the court is the only way to get better while you're on the court.
Yeah. I agree. Totally agree. We had a couple questions come in about partnerships again. Just in terms now, these questions, one came from Carol and there was somebody else, but you have a partner who's down. You have a partner who's not performing well. You know that they're struggling mentally. What are some of the things that you would recommend to do to help them?
So let's tap into the most obvious thing that you shouldn't do, that I think, and I only say that because most players do it too often, is critique and coach. When they're in the dumps or they're not making correct decisions, and we can obviously strategically say, remember, our plan is this. There's a big difference between remember, we want to hit this, and don't freaking hit that. Why did you, can't believe you did that. That's the last thing we want to do. Understanding too, and most importantly, will help guide you through this, is there's nothing you can do or say that is going, that will, or that you're in control of changing your partner's performance. That's a him or her challenge. What we have to do in those moments is 100% positive and supportive language, whatever that means. It could mean any kind of language that works for you and your partner. It's okay, keep trying it. Or how about we try this? Or it's okay, no worries. It can be, hey, do you want me? Maybe I'll squeeze the middle a little bit and cut off a little. Anything positive and supportive, a hug, a timeout, and a reassurance. Or this is really good too. We've done this. I've been down 6-13. We were down 9-14, and my partner said something that had absolutely nothing to do with pickleball, and it made me laugh. Simple like that. And it took a little bit of stress, and I started to loosen up a little bit that way, and then we made a nice little run. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be pickleball related, as long as it's not negative, eye rolling. I can't believe you do. When are you gonna? Right? And again, with partners, we want to, in a perfect world, know how our partner responds, what type of language, right? How, we want to get to know when at all possible, which is why spending time off of the court with our partners or talking about matches or talking about certain game plans is really important too, because then you learn more about how your partner ticks, how he or she thinks, and the language he or she likes. Right. So because we know one of us will fall into that, I know that she likes to be talked like this. I know he would rather have me say this. And sometimes it's okay. It's no big deal. Let's go. And other times he wants to be fired up on. He wants to be like, what? So it really, the answer again is based on what you know about your partner. On a general terms, it's always positive, always supportive. Never, ever, ever under any circumstance critique or coach outside of your normal, remember our game plan is. Let's try to, both of us, not just you, both of us keep continuing to X. It's crazy, CJ, how many people have a hard time with being positive with their partners.
It is. It is. I mean, it's funny. I have a partner that I play with, not as much. I just don't play a lot of tournaments anymore, but we played for fairly regularly for a while. And he was the kind of person who, when he got fired up, he got better until that point, which is what you talked about earlier. And for all of us, there's that breaking point, right? If we use negative energy to fire ourselves up, we have to be real careful with that negative energy, because it can take us past the point into poor performance. And it became real. It didn't take me long to understand when he crossed that point, and I'd call a timeout. I didn't even ask him if he wanted a timeout, because if I asked him, he would have told me no. And he used to laugh. He'd come over, and then he'd put this smile on his face. He says, "You're putting me in the timeout chair, aren't you?" And it used to be this giggle, and it was enough to break the tension, and it was enough to break him where we were. We didn't talk about strategy. We sat there and giggled for our timeout for our minute, and then we went back out and played. And most of the time, it had a positive effect on how we played as a team. But like you said, it's all about conversation. All about conversation.
And understanding you can't change your partner's play. There's nothing you can do, because you can't grab his or her paddle and execute for them. So what's the alternative? Keep them as positive and as up and as loose, whatever loose or fired up as you can, right? That's your job as a partner. And go down swinging with that as our blueprint.
Okay, we got a good one coming. This is coming from Cassandra, and she said, "My husband is 78, and he's going to play in his first tournament as a 3-0. Congratulations to your husband. Nice. That's awesome. That's sweet. His attitude is, in quotes, someone has to lose. Other than hit him in the head." Probably not a good idea, but I'm going to guess you've maybe been married for a while and you know that's not good. Other than hit him in the head, how do I get him to go into this more positively? I love your question.
That's a tough, other than hit him in the head. Yeah, someone has to lose. That's fun. I thought you meant at first he's going to hit somebody in the head. Nope, she's going to hit him. Well, first off, and this is a tough one too. You can't. Like, all you can do is guide him, right? And you know him better than anybody knows him. And our responsibility as a partner isn't to make them play better. It's to put them in an environment, in an emotional environment, and in a confident environment, in an environment of belief as best as we can. And then we've just got to let them go. Right. And remember, belief is it's a personal decision. So if he doesn't believe, there's literally nothing you can do to make him believe. You can only be positive and supportive and just keep talking in that language. And then it's up to him to choose. And then that right there just takes the stressor and the uncontrollable type of pressure off of us when we realize I can't make him or her believe. I can make me believe, and I can show him, I can explain why you should talk like this, or why you should behave like this, or why, and this is what will happen. Let me give you examples from players that are super negative, and let me give you examples that are super positive, and look who plays better. And then you have to let him make his decision. So to answer the question, literally, there's nothing you can do to make him play better, but you can create a more positive, as a positive environment as you can, right? And try not to hit him in the head. It's not healthy. Or do it. Maybe they'll change. Or do it.
Right. I'm laughing because I'm watching the chat, and she's telling us she's been married 32 years, and she won't be his partner. His friend is going to be his partner. So I got to tell you, she's a really smart woman. I know this about Cassandra already. And hey, by the way, I just a mention, as I said, we had a conversation going on before this inside of the Pickleball list. We're going to have a conversation going on after this, because there's so much, as Dayne said, there are so many things in terms of the mental game, and we're all different. And we have to learn how we perform the best. So make sure that you join us over in the Pickleball list afterwards. We'll be having this conversation for eons, because as you said, one of the fun things about talking to people who've been successful really in any sport is, what are they thinking, right? What are they thinking? That's different, because when you look at different, yes, sometimes technique looks a little bit different, but everybody has about the same kind of basic skill level, right? So what's happening is what's going on up here. I mean, that's right. What the difference is.
And it's a skill set.
Exactly.
It's a skill set. I think there are a lot of amateurs coming up that look at the top players, whether in their division or, the best of the best, and just oh, he's just gifted. She's just it just comes so naturally. No. I mean, yes, obviously, there's got to be a specific certain level of talent. But Simone works her face off. Ben works his butt off. It just, they go into another level of not just positive self-talk, but they take it a step deeper, and they look through the lens of their opponent. And they're talking about belief. I think we can really take it to another level too when we start thinking about our opponent's level of belief instead of just our own. Like, my number one goal when I'm playing anybody is to break them first, because they're not going to break me. Like that, they might beat me, but they're not going to break me. So my number one goal over any physical strategy or shot or mechanic is to find the puzzle piece that eventually breaks them mentally. And I'm constantly looking for a lack of belief in both of my opponents, whether it's an obvious whether it's a subtle shoulder drop. The second your opponent misses, there's a split second of instinctive response that they cannot hide. You want to look for that. Are they believing, or are they quitting? Because after that second, they can fake it, right? So start paying attention to your opponent's level of belief and make that a priority, and start looking for ways to break them. And when you do that, because again, I hope I don't miss, and how am I going to break them? What do I have to? You can't do those simultaneously. You have to choose. Ben is a master at looking through his opponent's eyes and breaking his opponents down based on the information that he's gathering. But you can be a 3-0 and do that too. Right. You can be a 3-5 and do the exact. You don't have to be Ben. We're not playing against 6-5s. 3-0s are playing against 3-0s plus or minus. Yes. So it's not this special fairy dust, right? You can learn this. It's a skill set, but it must be intentional, and you must practice it over and over. Which again, to your point, CJ, I hope that we go to Pickleball List and continue the conversation.
Absolutely.
That specific conversation will change your game 10x immediately. It doesn't mean you'll win or lose, but your performance will be better when you're looking through your opponent's lenses.
Well, and what's really interesting, and if there's a place that I have had to change in terms of my mental game, I come from solitary sports. I come from golf.
Yeah.
You're playing the golf course. You are not playing anybody else. You're not paying attention to Dayne over there and what he's doing, right? You are playing the golf course. In skiing, you're focused on the race course, right? How fast can I go on that race course? I'm not focused on what my competitor is doing. And when that has been a major transition for me mentally in pickleball. I'm so used to blocking everybody else out that it was going unnoticed when I had somebody in a corner
Right.
where I could have taken advantage of a situation and I let him go. And it was definitely, as Dayne says, this is a skill that is a learned skill. And even if you have different mental tools, you need unique ones for this sport as well. So.
Yeah. They're handing you information. You're not playing Ben or Simone where they're trained to not give you much. You're
Right.
playing 3-0s, 3-5s, 4-0s. They're handing you free confidence. They're giving it to you with how they respond to their misses. Take it in, because at 9-9, you'll be able to use it, right? They're just handing you. So pay attention to what your opponents are saying or not saying. They're not even trying to hide it. They're saying out loud, "Oh my God, I can't believe I missed another dink. I can't dink today." Game over. You say that out loud, match is over.
All I'm gonna do is hit you shots you have to dink.
That's it. No matter what.
Your backhand dink? Really? Okay. Yeah, I can give you that.
That's right. Exactly.
Hey, Dayne, as we wind this down, tell everybody how, besides Pickleball List, which I think Dale put up some information in the show notes over there, please tell everybody how they can contact you and learn more about your coaching and what you have to offer.
Well, thank you for that. My site is coachdayne.com. And I'm constantly reach over there and say hi, shoot me a note. But I'm every day, actually, I'm getting notes like, "Oh my God, you are posting so much." Every day trying to just produce content on Facebook, Dayne Gingrich there, Instagram, Dayne_Gingrich, and just constantly trying to produce just a ton of content to help us think differently, right? And I think, understanding that the mental game is, your holy grail to peak performance, right? Obviously, you have to physically train, but learning that it's not rainbows and fairy dust. It's not because you're special or you're just born with it. We get to train it, which means we're all standing on equal playing field, right? It's about how much we want to put in the work to developing a new type of skill. And I think it's just so fun because it's just endless what we can learn about ourselves and how we respond, and we can have fun with it. It doesn't have to be crazy intense, right? It can be super fun learning how to improve how we talk to ourselves and how we respond after a miss. And I think what's so much fun that I talk about a lot on these social networks too is, like we were just saying, trying to pick up on cues, pick up on your opponent's cues. And that's so much fun because it takes the pressure off of always staring at ourselves and judging ourselves. Now we get to look at, oh my gosh, Joe did that and Susie did that, and oh my gosh, they're thinking the same way I'm thinking. How can I break that down? It becomes like this fun puzzle that we're trying to constantly put pieces to, right? So thank you so much, CJ. This has been a blast, and you didn't know this, but I'm going to continue the conversation when you sign off. I'm going to stay here, and we're going to do this for 3 more hours just solo, because it's just so exciting. And this has been fun, especially when you put the solo screen on me. At first that kind of threw me, like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to myself. And now I'm like, CJ doesn't know what she's done. She has no idea.
Well, and that truly is the fun part because one of the things, I've done a lot of mindset things with Laura Fenton Cavada, right? And when she comes to Tahoe and when she's teaching in Tahoe, she stays with me, and as her and just hanging out. That's one of those things we're always having conversations about is, well, how do you think of this, and what have you done here, and it's kind of interesting because it's gone back and forth. Like she's come here and she's gone skiing with me, right? And she doesn't ski very often. How do you start to apply that? And by the way, for somebody who skis as little as she does, she's a really good skier too. But how do you start to apply those types of things to all these different sports? And that's one of the things that you see with people who are good athletes. Take those mental skills and make them transferable to to the task that is in front of them. Now, hey everybody, if you did not get your questions answered, I think we got to most of them. Hopefully we did, but I also know that some of you are sitting like a little fly on the wall and maybe don't want to get those questions out there. Don't worry about it. That's part of the learning process. We are always learning. I mean, we're always learning. Come on over to Pickleball List and let's, ask the questions over there. You can follow either Dayne or I. You can even message us. Now, I will tell you, one of the things that we like is we can put these messages out, not necessarily with your name on them, but we can put them out for everybody to see. Because if you have a question, chances are somebody else has that same question. And it's just easy. It's an easy way to answer it and really to elevate everyone's game. That's what it's all about. So, Dayne, it has been totally fun. Tell your daughter she's off the hook, but next time I'm going to call and I'm going to talk to the other Gingrich in the house because I want I want to hear how she's applying it and what she's learning because I'll bet you she would do your coaching justice.
She's a beast. She's a mental beast. She's a little crazy to be a gymnast. You got to be a little nutty.
Yeah, anybody who's gonna flip their body through the air on like a beam that's 4 inches wide. Yeah, that's kind of an interesting skill set. So, Dayne, thank you so much for being here. We truly appreciate having you here, and we've got some links in the chat for you to get in touch with Dayne as well. And one of the ways that I always end this show is come on back. By the way, next week live we have Dr. Ellen Rosenthal talking about pickleball injuries, so you don't want to miss that. And there'll be a new video up for you every single Saturday, so make sure you come back to the Better Pickleball channel. But I always end these by saying, together we can train smart, live bold, and age well. Good night, everybody.